Hi guys, welcome back to the Forgetful Scholar, and this week, 2 books. So one, Best Friends, and it's a revisit, a reread, and the other is Self-Defense. So I'm gonna go with the revisit or the reread. It's an FM historical, Johanna, Lindsey, The Heir. Here is the cover, and here is the step back, lovely. Now I just felt like this has always been a 5-star for me, still is, and I just wanted to comfort read a book I already know that I love. I'm in a little bit of a slump. I feel like it's like the beginning of a slump, so I'm trying to stop it before it becomes a full slump, right? So, this is one of my favorites, and this is basically Duncan and Sabrina. So Duncan, his parents died, and his Scottish grandfather has raised him in the Highlands. And one day, and I was so always surprised because this hero's like young, like 18, 19, maybe the oldest 20. He's not in his 20s, not in his 30s. You know, he's a pretty young hero. And his grandfather is like, well, I made an agreement with your other grandfather that he's never met, his English grandfather, that when you turned an adult, you had to go down there and marry a British bride. So the two grandfathers have been in communication, basically kind of decided everything for Duncan, right? And Duncan goes to his English grandfather because he loves his Scottish grandfather and wants to, like, not go back on his Scottish grandfather's word. You know what I mean? Duncan is very, like, much about honor. He's a really nice guy. He's very much about honor and things like that, right? So basically, the two grandfathers have conspired to engage him. And he's going to meet his betrothed. Now, this book takes place pretty much over a British country party for like 2 weeks. So I wouldn't call this a slow burn, but it is kind of a weird friends to lovers, even though they really weren't friends for a very long time. So Duncan goes to England and he sees his betrothed, and his betrothed is Ophelia, who I've mentioned multiple times as one of basically the masterclass in how to make the horrible bitch from one book turn into like the heroine that you root for in another, you know? So he sees her and she is the most gorgeous woman ever. And then she opens her mouth and she purposely insults him in front of people. And he's like, I'm not marrying her. And he knows she did it on purpose, right? So he goes to his English grandfather, who is an interesting fellow. When he first meets him, he's like in a very stuffy room. He's not really allowed out. He has all these paintings of a red-headed boy, but he's like, oh, but you've never like met me. But he has all these paintings made of Duncan when he was younger and things like that. So there's little hints that the grandfather isn't like the horrible abandoned person that, you know, Duncan thinks he is, right? So, and the British grandfather is like, oh, absolutely, you're correct. She would not do. So he opens up the party to everybody. And everybody is their neighbor, Sabrina. Now, Sabrina, her parents died. And, like, everyone's like, oh, her family's cursed or whatever. Because her parents, like, it was a weird circumstance, her parents died. And she's raised by her 2 spinster aunts who are hilarious. Like, very funny comedic duo. They kind of reminded me, like, there's 2 of them. But it's like if, I don't know if you guys know about the Golden Girls. If they were, like, all meshed into 2 people. Like, if Dorothy and Rose was one person and Blanche and Sophia was one person, like, they kind of made me think of that, right? So I thought they were hilarious. And they don't like Duncan's grandfather, so they kind of, like, poke at him every time they see him, which is weird because when we first meet the British grandfather, he's, like, bedbound, right? And then Duncan comes and he's, like, a little bit more lively. He leaves his room, which I think is, like, super sweet, you know? And the fact that the ants kind of poke at him, give him a little bit more life, you know? Like a little bit more something to live by, something to do, which I thought was kind of sweet, you know? Because it kind of showed, like, in a very soft kind of way, like, how depression really affects people and how it can make, oh, cue the dog. Probably the enemy cat from the neighborhood. Anyway, like how depression can make a sickness worse, you know? Because in modern day, it kind of sounds like he has really bad asthma. And, you know, but anyway. So Sabrina, and I really love Sabrina because even though she has violet eyes, she's considered plain. Like, she's very plain looking. She's not a great beauty. And I kind of love the books where the girl's just a normal person, like normal looking person, and the guy falls in love with her. You know what I mean? I kind of love that. It's especially since like Ophelia is like perfect outside, and like in this book you really think she's rotten inside. And Sabrina's like not perfect outside, but she's just pure gold inside. She's funny, she's sweet, she's compassionate. She makes people laugh. She's very charming. So her and Duncan become friends with Raph, and Raph is just one of the ton or English higher society that's invited. His little sister's invited because Raph is a duke. Why is Raph important? Because I love Raph and Duncan's friendship, and I love how Raph purposely makes Duncan jealous throughout the whole book just for funsies. It's great. It's great. So this is for him basically to find, bride, and he's basically doesn't want to talk to anybody besides Sabrina. You know what I mean? And through the whole thing, you could see Ophelia's still there to keep face, and she holds court and she starts rumors, and she's kind of horrible. And she's kind of horrible to one of her childhood friends. That will come up later. I think her name is Maeve. Yeah, that will come up in a bit. So obviously Sabrina and Duncan fall in love, and Sabrina is not getting her hopes up because Duncan is going to be not only like a Highland laird, but also a marquis. You know what I mean? So like, he's pretty big on the title scale, and she's not, and she's not a great beauty, so she doesn't think he's interested in her, but he is. He's fell in love with who she is, and I love that, right? So one thing leads to another, and Ophelia makes Sabrina cry because she's really horrible in this book. And Duncan follows her, and in comforting her, they have sex. Oopsie, accident. He just slipped and fell. So, and Duncan is a very honorable person, even though he has a bit of a temper, and we'll see. So he's like, I'm gonna marry Sabrina because I compromised her and I adore her. You know what I mean? He goes to confront Ophelia, but Ophelia, and in his temper, he didn't realize Ophelia is like mid-changing, and Maeve shows up and runs away, and she's like, you ruined it, now my reputation is going to be ruined. So the British grandfather's like, you're kind of stuck, you have to marry Ophelia. Even though, and Duncan hasn't explained to anybody that like, he already compromised Sabrina, you know what I mean? And Sabrina takes it the really wrong way, that he went from making love to Sabrina to immediately going to Ophelia, who she thinks he really loves. Like, it's a whole thing, And what the funniest thing about this is, like, first time I read it, I'm like, oh my god, is he gonna have to marry Ophelia? Even though I know Johanna Lindsey always has happy endings, right? And then when I revisited, I was still like, oh my gosh, is he gonna have to marry Ophelia? When I know that's a no. That's good storytelling right there. You know what I mean? So basically, Sabrina and Duncan are trying to find Maeve to make sure Maeve stays quiet so that, well, no, Duncan does it so that he can marry Sabrina, the woman he loves, and not Ophelia. And I forget what exactly it is that Duncan said, but it made, Ophelia's gonna hate it. Good. I'm gonna make, she was being really bitchy and spiteful, right? And because of that, Duncan is completely depressed, right? And the British grandfather is like, we're going to stall. We're going to stall the shit out of this until I run down her parents and I force them to make her agree, because you are not being forced into marrying that bitch of a woman. You know what I mean? He's all behind Duncan, and then his Scottish grandfather shows up and he's like, oh, just marry Ophelia. She's gorgeous. Who cares if you don't like her? Who cares if you... who cares about love? No, just marry Ophelia, she's pretty. And Archie doesn't, Archie's the Scottish grandfather, doesn't seem to get that, like, it's an interesting thing where the grandfather Duncan thinks abandoned him, sees him as an adult and, takes his wishes into consideration and is supportive of him, where Archie, the Scottish grandfather that raised him, still sees Duncan as a little boy and is like, no, just marry the pretty one, and you could see the other one on the side, who cares? Stuff like that. So it's a very interesting contrast. And you find out through this, because the Scottish grandfather didn't stop Duncan from thinking these things. He didn't put these thoughts in his head, but he didn't stop Duncan from thinking that the British grandfather abandoned him. Turns out the British grandfather tried to go to the Highlands. Because of his health, one journey nearly killed him. And because they're so secluded, there's not really a lot of correspondence that could go back and forth. So it wasn't that he abandoned him in person, it's just his health, you know? And Duncan feels really bad about it because he's been kind of bitchy towards his British grandfather to this point, you know? So that's nice that kind of gets settled. It's very sweet. And you see Duncan becoming a little bit more like, I'm an adult, I'll handle it a little bit more, you know? And I understand he's still young for Hero, but it's nice to see a little bit of that progression, right? Basically, it's like D-Day, and he's gonna have to marry Ophelia, and he's miserable because he only loves Sabrina, and Sabrina is miserable. And it's the whole, like, it's so dramatic, and I love it. And then finally, boom, last minute, Maeve shows up and is like, just kind of lays into Ophelia and says, I'm not going to keep quiet for you. I'm going to keep quiet for Sabrina because she's a good person. Like, and she kind of lays into her into a point where, like, even the people watching, which is Duncan, two grandfathers, the aunts, Sabrina, and Ralph, they're watching this and they're, like, uncomfortable at, like, the amount of vitriol Maeve is spouting, to the point where Ophelia runs away and cries, and Ralph runs after her and comforters, because he's a gentleman, he doesn't like people crying. As during all this, Ralph is like, if Duncan doesn't marry you, I'll marry you, because what better way to marry than, if you can't marry for love, marry for friendship, you know? And that makes Duncan insanely jealous. But yeah, he deserves it, because Duncan was an idiot and he let his temper get the better of him and then put them in the situation, you know? But happy ending was achieved by all, so that's good. And the second book in the series, which is also 5-star for me, is Ophelia and Raph's story. And as I said, that one is a masterclass in turning like a bitch from one book that you just want like dead, again, bloodthirsty, but you guys know how I am, to a heroine you actually root for. So I really needed this. Can you tell how happy this book made me? I really kind of needed like a comfort revisit to one of my favorites. And this book came out 2001. So I just really needed that. Again, I'm trying to stop the reading slump. So this one is self-defense, and it is Murder Alone, Maine, a Noodle Shop Mystery Book 3. And look how gorgeous that cover is, by Vivien Chein. And I had fun with this. I would say this is a 3-star. So for mysteries, I asked myself 2 questions. Did I have fun reading it? Did I like the characters? Yes. Did I think the mystery was good? And then I go back and think about all the clues that were laid out, and if there was enough real clues mixed in with the red herrings, so that doesn't seem like Deus Ex Machina kind of a thing, right? Forgive my fuzzy hair. You guys know I live in the desert and it's like 100 degrees. And it rained, surprisingly, last night. So we're actually having a bit of humidity. So weird. Anyway, this one, I liked the story. I liked the people. The mystery wasn't so good. Like, the mystery itself was good, but the clues laid out, like when the bad guy was, found out, and I thought back to all the clues laid out, and it's like, no, they didn't do, the second murder had a lot more clues laid out, but the first one, not so much. And the clues are always all centered around quotes from The Art of War. And there's like a comment in this, like, oh, having that book already, that's kind of weird. And I felt personally attacked because, yes, I do have The Art of War up there. It's in my philosopher section. Yeah. I moved my philosopher section, so it is not in grabbing range because it is on my top shelf. So, it's up there though. You have to take my word for it. And it just, the clues that linked, the first murder clue that linked it to the murderer with just the fortune cookies as a clue, I don't think there was enough to connect it. The second murder, the clue was a drink of choice. And that one, I was like, oh, okay, it's this guy. It's gotta be, because, you know, I don't want to give it away because it's a mystery, you know, but it follows our lovely Lana. And, you know, she is enjoying being the manager of her family's noodle shop. She's kind of letting her insecurities get to her about Adam, Detective Adam Trudeau from the other books that she's dating. In this, finally, we get Adam's like backstory, why he's been so standoffish with her, and it's a good one. Like, he's got a brooding past. Like, he's got like lead on a network TV crime procedural kind of backstory, brooding past backstory. I'm like, oh, okay. No wonder he's been kind of like pushing her away a little bit, and he's like, he doesn't want to push her away, right? And there's I don't know, there was this weird part where this new guy comes into the village, the Asian village where all the shops are, and he's gorgeous apparently, and he hits on Lana. I'm like, Lana, girl, you got all these guys, you know, like, all right. It's kind of funny, and I'm like, but what's the point of this? Is he gonna be like in the second book? Is he, I mean, the book after this? Like, I'm just curious why so much emphasis on him. Was it to show to the reader there's a difference between attraction and emotion? Because if it is, that was a really good way to show it, because, you know, she's like, okay, internally she's like, okay, he's hot, but I don't have feelings for him, and Adam's hot and I have feelings for him. So I mean, that was good. So that was a little confused by it. And again, I'm kind of disappointed about the clues laid out for who it was. It definitely kind of reminded me of, you know, we've all watched like cozy mystery movies or TV shows where you're kind of like, what? Wait, he's the bad guy? Wait, what clues were we supposed to pick up? Because there weren't really a lot. So I'm kind of disappointed in that one. I'm still enjoying the series. I think Lana is very funny. I like how every book she seems to be a little bit better at standing up for herself. And in this book, again, she can't pick the right murderer for shit. Like, this is the third book. And the third time, she picked the wrong murderer and went to who she thought was innocent to talk about the other murderer. And it's like, oh, no, turns out that's the murderer. So, at least this time she didn't get, like, almost shot and stuff like that, right? But she is locked in the office with this guy. And she uses the Art of War, the book Art of War, to like beat the crap out of him. And I'm like, yeah, hit him in the head. Yeah, kick him in the nuts. Yeah. Because you guys know I'm bloodthirsty. And I really enjoyed that part. So that was a lot of fun. And it was good to see that Lana like can defend herself. Because like, okay, because of Adam Trudeau's past, he's really terrified about Lana getting hurt. And I'm like, bro, buy her a stun gun, buy her some mace, teach her some self-defense. Keeping like a strong, independent person in a bubble isn't gonna work out, you know? But I do like that this book seemed to put an end cap on any kind of insecurities between Lana and Adam. And I'm not judging their romance by romance novel standards. You know, I'm not. I'm judging it by like network TV standards. And I'm like, yeah, that's good enough emotion. Cool. Good enough emotional investment with you guys. Good. Because I'm more interested in the mystery with these ones. So this one, the mystery is a little disappointing. The murders were fun. Fun? The murders were interesting. The clues, I think, for the first one could have been a little better. I think if there was a discussion about the book Art of War, or maybe between a couple of the guys before the murders even happened, that would have been interesting. It would be interesting to whittle it down, at least for the reader. It'd be like, oh, it has to be one of these three guys because they had this discussion of the book Art of War, you know, in the business context, and these fortune cookies are those clues, you know, are quotes from said book. Okay, I think that would have been good, because until the second murder, there are no clues connected to the Art of War book, even though that's a huge thing because that's the quotes. It's a huge thing in this book because that's the quotes that are being used. So I think that could have been polished a little bit. But other than that, I had fun. It was a nice week. Again, I'm trying to stop a slump from happening. I don't know if I achieved it. I might have to just binge some fan fiction. I don't know. What are we gonna do? Life is so tough. Okay. I don't want to, but it's time for me to get back to the real world. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you later. Bye.